as countries around the world go into lockdown, you've got to ask yourself, is this real? Is this an exercise? Pre-planned event? There's good reason to ask these questions. Let's just look at something that happened in October last year. This is in the Telegraph, and as you can see from the date there, it's from the 21st of October 2019, last October. Disease X dummy run. World health experts prepare for a deadly pandemic and its fallout. The updates were coming into the Situation Room thick and fast, and the news was not good. The virus was spreading. The former deputy director of the CIA took off her glasses, rubbed her eyes, and addressed the panel. We also have to consider that the terrorists could take advantage of this situation, she said. We're looking at the possibility of famine. There is the potential for outbreaks of secondary diseases. The stark warnings right there of future events to come. This is nowhere near over, guys. One of her aides leant forward and handed her a note. She read it quickly and continued. I have an update from my staff. I have been told that several governments have fallen and others are teetering. If it sounds like a scene from a disaster film, the organisers would be pleased that was their intention. On Friday, a panel of 15 high-powered international figures gathered in a ballroom of a New York hotel to game a scenario in which a pandemic is raging across the world, killing millions. It's not all that far-fetched. I fully expect that we will be confronted by a fast-moving global pandemic, said Dr. Mike Ryan, Executive Director of the World Health Organization Health Emergencies Program. Interesting that he fully expects that to happen. This was in October, and in December it did. By the way, these side articles here we'll look at later. Addressing the participants with the 150 observers before the scenario began, he said that the World Health Organization deals with 200 epidemics every year. It's only a matter of time, 2 months, before one of those becomes a pandemic, defined as a disease prevalent over a whole country or the world. The issues may be tabletop scenarios today, but they could be real tomorrow, he said. This is our new normal. How many of these are we going to have? The 15 panelists were not acting, rather they were behaving as themselves and responding to the best of their experience to the situations presented to them. Aides would hand them updates which they would share with the panel and discuss. The lights went down and the spooky music began to play. Should be began, but never mind. Dragon's Den meets X Factor with a plague thrown in. An anchor with the fictional Global News Network, GNN, set the scene. The imaginary coronavirus. Hello? Just, the imaginary coronavirus. This is in October. Before we'd even heard of it. Originally from pigs, and that was the original story, then changed to bats. But anyway, originally from pigs, was spreading fast throughout South America, causing a respiratory condition known as CAPS, similar to the real-life SARS and MERS outbreaks. The airborne disease was up to 4 times as lethal as a virus which killed 50 to 100 million in the 1918 flu pandemic. That was the Spanish flu. The last serious pandemic to hit. Chen Huang, the anchor, looked worried. Now it was over to the panel. What advice would the team give the government about how to handle this? Asked Tom Inglesby, director of the Jane Hopkins Centre for Health Security and chair of the Event 201 discussion. If you follow Richie from Boston, you'll have already heard about this. The event was organised jointly by Johns Hopkins, the World Economic Forum, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And who's just stepped down from Microsoft to head this pandemic? Again, side articles we'll look at later. Adrian Thomas, the Vice President of Global Public Health for the pharmaceutical firm Johnson & Johnson, said it was essential to have clarity around the need. Where was the virus spreading fastest? Jane Halton, former president of the World Health Assembly and advisor of the Australian government, chair of the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness, stressed the need to ensure that low and middle income countries were not forced out of the way by richer countries. There's an equalising of finances and economic status across the world. And the way that's worded, it's not to bring third world countries up to first world standards. It's to take first world countries down to third world standards. Why don't we have a second world? Why do we go from first to third? Where's the second? For the next 3 hours, the discussion continued, with Mr. Inglesby directing the thematic debates how to allocate and distribute antivirals. So that's coming. Should limits be placed on trade and travel? That's come. To stop the spread of the virus. How best to mitigate the economic and financial crisis caused by the pandemic, which is everything you're hearing in the news at the moment. How can we stop the economic impacts on this? And then what they do is they tell everybody, oh, you're going to have to self-isolate for 2 weeks. So everybody goes out to the supermarkets, and they're all being called selfish and panic buyers. But they're buying enough supplies to last them for 2 weeks. That's because the government said that was going to happen, and people are reacting in a very sensible way, in my opinion, by getting a couple of weeks worth of supplies, because that's what the government said you would need. It's no surprise there's been a run on the supermarkets, and the people that caused that are the government and the media, by telling everybody that the situation, when we were standing at 35 deaths, they were already calling it a pandemic. Because they know what's coming. Because they're running, they're pulling the strings. The panel would convene every 3 weeks, with the death toll rising and the virus spreading. We're not sure how big this could get, but there is no end in sight, said Chen Huang, the GNN anchor, grimly. How, the panel was asked, could they stop disinformation? Which I'm sure this video itself will be counted as. YouTube have already released several videos saying how they're going to deal with misinformation, and they say that they are going to promote the mainstream media. They're also going to keep the mainstream media channels monetized for all their stories on coronavirus, but any other channels will be suppressed and put down the algorithms, something that they said they didn't do a couple of months ago, and now they just come out and say, yeah, well, we're doing it. George Fu Gao, the Director General of the Chinese Centre for Disease Control, told how while in Sierra Leone during the Ebola crisis of 2014 to 16, he was told by a health worker, "We believe Ebola is a man-made." Fair enough. Avril Haines, the former CIA deputy director, sitting next to Mr. Gale, nodded. Having a trusted source and really guiding everyone to that for information is incredibly important, she said, adding that survivors of the virus, faith leaders, and multinational agencies all had a role to play. Didn't mention crisis actors there, did they? just saying. I digress. As the lights came up for a final time, millions were dead. The pandemic had ravaged the globe, Huang said, sparking rioting and the collapse of many governments. It would take decades to return to pre-pandemic order. Well, we've already seen the parts earlier in the article have come to light. So you can bet your ass that is coming. And I was saying this, I've said this to friends in private, I can see events like the London riots that started in London obviously and then spread to the whole country just a few years back. Again, another orchestrated event. I can see that happening because they are putting people into panic. At the moment, they're using divide and conquer tactics. They had a nurse on the news crying her eyes out the other day because she'd been to the supermarket and couldn't get any food. It looked acted to me, but nobody's questioning what she's saying. She says that she's just finished a 48-hour shift and then drove to the supermarkets and couldn't get food. Now, there is a shortage of food in the supermarkets. That is very true. We've had to shop every day this week just to get all the basic essentials that we need for the next few days, because we're not stocking up. We're not, you know what I mean? It's we can't afford to bloody stock up for a month for one, but also, the supermarket prices have actually gone up a lot. So we're just buying what we need when we need. But you can't get what you need when you need because the supermarket shelves are empty. Although I did go around the back of the supermarkets and there was lorries delivering stuff and the warehouses are stocked full. They're absolutely full. This was B&M's in Hyde, Greater Manchester, Asda. I got a look in both their warehouses. The Iceland warehouse, called the Iceland Warehouse, but their warehouse, all fully stocked. It's just not on the shelves. This has been great, but I will go back to Zurich and talk about it. And other business leaders will say, yes, we know, but we have business to do, admitted Mr. Martin Knuckle, head of crisis for Lufthansa. A list of suggestions were drawn up. More finance, better sharing of information, more planning. The World Health Organization has already staged 50 such scenarios worldwide. More need to be held. Is this a staged scenario by the World Health Organization, as admitted that they are going to do? In October, they said they have already held 50 scenarios. They will hold more. They've also called it the coronavirus in this earlier on. This all sounds staged just from this one article alone. Anita Cicero, Deputy Director of Johns Hopkins, left the panel, the observers and the online watchers with a final question. Are we, as a global community, ready to do the hard work needed to stop the next pandemic. Well, they seem ready and able to start it. I don't know if we are at risk from this thing going around. Is it all fake? I know Richie from Boston says, it's just a mild flu. I don't know. I'm not a health expert. I'm not even that healthy. All I know is I'm reading the signs there, and they're saying they're going to stage something. They've mentioned the coronavirus, and then this happens just a couple of months after this big plan. Bill Gates steps down from all his official roles to head this up, and he's mentioned in there, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has been linked to a lot of shady activity in the past as well. They could certainly spread a real virus. And this is the other thing, is it a virus or a disease? It keeps getting called different things. I mean, if you think of the name they're using for it now, COVID-19. CO comes from corona. VI comes from virus. D for disease. COVID. I don't know. Like I say, I'm not a health professional. There is this divide and conquer, though, happening at the moment, as I was saying before, with this nurse, and there's news reports of these shops are opening for an hour in the morning for health professionals, healthcare workers, to be able to go and buy their stuff before everybody else, so that they're not going without. Well, why are they being treated to everybody else? You can easily argue, well, they're our last line of defence. Well, my doctors are shut. I can't go to my doctors. I've got fucking text messages. I've been getting them for 2 weeks telling me, if you get ill, don't come to us. You're not going to hospital if you get this. Only the serious cases are going to hospital, which there's only a small amount of the people that have got it that are serious cases. I don't even know how many people are in hospital, but it's low numbers. So what's all this talk everybody's going on about, that the NHS workers are working flat out and all this? They're actually doing less than they've ever done, from what I can see. You can't go for a test. If you've got any symptoms of anything like what they say, a cough, any flu symptoms, anything at all, you're not supposed to go to the doctors. You're supposed to self-isolate at home. On the government website it says for 7 days, on the news it says for 14. I mean, it's all conflicting information everywhere. They've not organised it very well at all. I can see through it. I hope you can too.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for their daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Their tears are filling up their glasses, no expression, no expression. Hide my head, I wanna drown my sorrow. No tomorrow. tomorrow. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Children waiting for the day they feel good. Happy birthday, happy birthday. And to feel the way that every child should sit and listen, sit and listen. Went to school and I was very nervous. No one knew me, no one knew me. Hello teacher, tell me what's my lesson. Look right through me, look right through me. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. The people run in circles, it's a very, very